Thank you so much, guys. My name is Amy Spain Duncan. I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is March 6th of 2010. I'm sponsored by a woman who is sponsored by a woman who is sponsored. I sponsor women who sponsor women who sponsor women. I love that part of this deal because I need guidance. I need some hand holding. I'm an idiot and I will think I have a great idea and I need somebody to remind me that I am still in step one, man. I'm still powerless and my life's still unmanageable because the ego's always fighting a return. And that's what I battle with every day, right? I have a home group. I have two home groups. I have a in-person home group called Lambton, and Lambton raised me. And I'm telling you, they had a job ahead of them, but they treated me with the patience, tolerance, and love that we treat the newcomer. And they taught me how to set up a chair and make coffee and stand at a door. And I love that. And I touch base there. I go there. It's like grandfather's apple tree, like the world gets scary and spinny. And I run to my home group and my friends are there and they're happy to see me and I'm happy to see them. And we share this message. It's a 3 legacy home group. We practice service unity and recovery. We have H&I outreach. And I don't know what you call it in your part of the world, but hospitals and institutions, we are a firing line group. We're a newcomers meeting. I also have an online home group or a Zoom home group called Hope for Today. And that's for some of the women that you saw come in and what a neat thing that's been. Sobriety is about expansion and whatever COVID, the world closed down and my world got bigger and bigger and bigger because I have friends all over the world that I can do things with. So that more, weird things that happen, like how does that happen? But that's what happened from that. Yesterday was my dad's 35th AA celebration. And, had he been still alive, he died with 30 years of sobriety. And I hear that first step in what Ralph read, and I get emotional. It just, the sacredness, the holiness of what we do is not lost on me. And I laugh and I love to have a good time. And it brings me a lot of joy, but man, this thing we do. And the desperation I came in with, that there was nothing funny, there was nothing joyful. Life was a veil of tears, and I was mad about it. I was angry. I was full of rage. Yesterday was my birthday. I turned 53 years old and I cried this morning because there was a time in my life where I was telling you, how tough I thought I was. I get mad, and when I get mad, I like to make a scene, because we're very, grandiose. And so I flipped the table, I cussed everybody out, threatened to kill several folks, and I went to leave after that, because after that, the only thing you can do is leave. And as I was leaving, I hit the door and I put my arm through the window and ruptured my brachial artery, and I'm bleeding to death. And I got to go back in where I just threatened everyone inside and say, I know we're not getting along. Things were said, but I need some help. And thank God they didn't push me out the door to bleed to death in the alley in the back, which happens. That happens. And they didn't do that. And they called an ambulance. And I'm down at the ER. It's 3-4 o'clock in the morning. I haven't talked to my family in months. Nobody knows where I am. And nobody, the nurse came around the corner because they were getting ready to take me into surgery. And I'll never forget this moment. She looked at me and said, "Who do you want us to call?" And I had no answer. I couldn't think of one person that I should call at 2 or 3 in the morning in my hour of need. And yesterday I had my birthday, and how Facebook is, and all these people, happy birthday, Amy. And this morning I was overwhelmed with it, and I broke down crying. And I think how far I've come, how different life is today. And any of those people, I could call any one of them and they would answer. And so things change for us. So in our step work in the beginning, it's about getting sober, man. I got to get sober. I would come to your meetings and I would hold your hand and I would drink your coffee and I would say your prayer, and I still drank. I couldn't stop drinking. And there would be well-meaning people who would say, don't drink and go to meetings. And I'd say, man, it's that first part I'm hung up on. I can come to your meetings, that's not my problem. My problem is the don't drink. Like I can't get there. I can't string together 24 hours. I'm in your meeting 2 or 3 times a day getting white chips. And thank God you clapped every time. Thank you for that. Thanks for not shaking your finger or telling me maybe this wouldn't work for me. You embrace me with love, and I meant it when I get that white chip, man. The desperation, the desire to quit, but it took me so long to get there, and finally in 2010, we talk all the time about being born without the instructions to life, and I feel like in 2010 you handed me the instructions. There's the manual. There's the how to do it, man. And I became a student of the literature. I mean, I had different highlighters and I underlined, I wrote in the margin, I bought a dictionary, I was here for it. I ate it up because it was like you had handed me something that I was missing. But it took so long, when we're in the act of alcoholism, we do not connect the dots. It was so long for me to get to step one, right? I started drinking in junior high, and I drink alcoholically. I love what Ralph read because that's the definition of alcoholism, right? I am the real alcoholic. I am bodily and mentally different than my fellows. I'm so grateful for that. I'm grateful that I'm not cross addicted. I'm grateful that I know what's wrong with me. And the doctor's opinion broke that down. And in Bill, I could relate to how he thinks, how he feels, how he drinks. I figured out what was wrong with me, but for so long I didn't know. I didn't know. I truly believed what was wrong with me was that my daddy left when I was 7, that, I got kicked off the basketball team, that mom was too mean. Like my problems were all them, those, and they situations and circumstances and a string of bad luck. That's what I thought my life was. I had no idea that alcoholism was what was wrong with me. And until I got there, till I could connect the dots, I don't need your help, right? I don't need your help if there's nothing wrong with me. If it's your problem, I'm just struggling to try to fix you, and that's in vain. I'm a real wild teenager. I'm out of control. My life is unmanageable from early on. I'm a I fight people. I sleep with your boyfriend. Women are very sensitive about that. I ended up in a lot of fist fights because, they would get, protective of that. I don't even want it really. It was just Friday. You can have it back Saturday. I used men, situations, things to just constantly get what I wanted. And I ended up changing high schools 4 times. We never moved. I changed high schools because I can't get along with you. And I don't know how to be accountable. I don't know anything about my part. I am a tornado. I mean, I relate so much with everything our book describes. And I am just creating chaos. And there's a solution we talk about, the wives, the blameless children, the employers. That was me. When I got sober in 2010, I had a tough sponsor. She pulled no punches with me. And I remember calling her one time and just, whatever, whining about something that wasn't fair, and she said, the only people we're going to feel sorry for is anybody that's met you. And she hung up on me. I thought it was pretty rash, man. But self-pity was off the table because I lived in self-pity. I lived in what they did to me. That's where I existed. And until I could move past that, I didn't have any shot at recovery. I ended up having a baby at 19. I'm drinking every day. I need to say that. And I want to kind of circle back to that Ralph read, right? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me is that I have a physical allergy. I do not respond to alcohol in a normal way. And the processing, the way the liver, the acetone level, I don't know what it is. But when I drink, I've never said, to my recollection, I think I've had enough. I don't think those words have ever crossed out of my mouth. Mine is more. Some people, they have a couple drinks, they lay down, they chill out. Buddy, you just started my engine. A couple drinks and the excitement builds, and I mean I can feel it move through me as it hits my belly. I get warm and we're ready to go. And buddy, I want to rock and roll. I just throw it into full throttle. And I run around town and I get in fist fights and I do inappropriate and tragic things. That's what I do when I drink. And I never plan on it. I never plan on it. It is without my permission this happens. I plan on having a few drinks with friends. I plan on going to a party. I plan on going to a football game. I plan on going to my mother's. But what ends up happening is I take a drink. And when that happens, it didn't matter what I was planning on. What's going to happen is unpredictable and usually tragic. But then what happens is when I'm not drinking, I'm thinking about drinking. That mental, it's like connecting the dots, figuring out what was wrong with me. Peter says we live life forward and we understand it backwards. And that's true for me, because looking back, as I examine my relationship with alcohol in step one, right? As I examine things, as I look back at is this true? Is this who I am? Is this my diagnosis? Are the dots connected? What I can tell you is from my first drink, I began to mentally obsess about alcohol. Things that had once been important began to slide down the priority list. Things like good grades, who cares? Things like track, who cares? Things like musical instruments and marching band, who cares? Right? Things like friendships and relationships, who cares? Things like I'm going to go to college and I'm going to get a degree. Who cares? I am thinking about when are we going to drink again? Who's buying it? Because it's hard to drink, it's like you want at 13. So I'm planning, I'm conniving, my brain is constantly figuring out when we can do that again and what it's going to look like and how it's going to be and will there be enough. That was always a fear. I remember always counting, and then counting the room, like how's this going to get divided and am I going to get enough? Right? Because I'm a glutton and I want to make sure I get mine. I want the biggest piece of the pie. And by the time my child is born at 19 years old, I am putting something in my body every day, because I'm not comfortable in this world and I need ease and comfort. And so I'm in full blown alcoholism at 19 years old, but I have this family around me that kind of holds the net and keeps things together and continues to help me and pay bills and offer me a place to live, so it doesn't look as messy as it's going to be. I was working at a bar and I love that, man. I can still smell the cigarettes and the piss on the floor, man. I'm not nice bars. I'm not a high, I'm a low bottom drunk. Because my dad used to say, I'm always looking for a place where my unacceptable behavior will be acceptable. Right. And the book talks about sorted places. And so that's me. Water seeks its own level. And I'm in the trenches, right? I want to be where there is blood and piss and cigarettes. I like it grimy and dirty and chaotic, because that matches what I think of me inside. And that matches what I think and the thoughts in my head. So I have to level it out. So I run with criminals and I'm a criminal, so it's fine. We're all criminals here. And that's what I do. And I started dating the bouncer because I like to fight and he likes to fight. And we used to get drunk and fight each other. And drunk, I think I can whoop a Marine. Again, part of the delusion, right? Part of the delusion. And, I have to say, again, the literature, the steps, the solution, I believe that. I believe that man was abusive and that I was a victim of that, and poor me. And my sponsor said, didn't you say when you drank you were very violent? I said, yeah. She said, was he ever protecting himself? And we laughed and laughed because we knew it was true. I will stab you. Like, I have no bones about it. I have a rage. I black out. I want to cause harm. And I was a volunteer in that. And we fought each other. And he usually won. But we fought each other, and I got pregnant by him, and he took off. And thank God, because I think that relationship, one of us was going to die. Like that was the level of insanity it operated at. And he left, and I got mad, so I started dating his little brother. Because that really makes men mad. And I like to poke a bear. I'm not above poking a bear. Anyway, he didn't like his brother that much anyway. And so it seemed like it would work out because we had a common enemy. And he and I got married. And, I remember as Led Zeppelin played in the chapel, I looked at him and I said to him, I need a beer. And he said, I know. And I was 24 years old and I needed a beer, man. Because the day before he had made me promise that I wouldn't drink before our afternoon wedding. These are red flags. These are tells, right? But none of us are seeing that you have to say to the bride, please don't show up to your own wedding plastered. But that was the conversation we had to have. And so I hadn't had a drink, and it was 4 PM, and I needed a beer. And we said I do, and I couldn't wait to get to that reception and tap that keg at the VFW. As I'm a Class A girl, and we had a blast, and we got drunk, and drinking still had some fun moments. But there was a line I would cross, and the fun would stop, and the insanity would seep in. And that's the way it was going to go. A year into that marriage, he said, I'm leaving you. Man, I didn't sign up for all this. And that's the frothy emotional appeal that Ralph was reading about, right? And I was 25 years old. And it sufficed. There was something, maybe I was a hard drinker, right? So there's this thing where something can happen, being in love, a new job, and we can stop. But I knew I couldn't stop alone. And I called my dad. My dad brought me to AA. And I was 25 years old and I quit drinking. I just quit drinking. I hung out with you guys. I drank your coffee. I held your hand. I said your prayers, and I didn't drink. And I went to a lot of meetings, and I had a lot of fun. And buddy, I love the fellowship because it's the same reason I love the bar. We're all here, and we're funny, and we're clever, and there's always something going on. And if you're lucky, there might be a fist fight. And I'm here for it. I got my coffee. I'm sitting down. I grabbed my cookie. I'm watching the show, man. I'm having a blast in Alcoholics Anonymous, the fellowship, the companionship, the connection. And I love to see this. It was the only place I wasn't in trouble. Because I had been in trouble since I was about 7 years old. I'm that kid, right? You talk too much, you lose everything, you can't think, right? Well, what's going on? I know now, like I have whatever ADHD, but Gen X, nobody cared. Nobody gave me a fidget spinner. They were just like, what's wrong with you? And the nuns told me to sit down and shut up, and I couldn't. And I was always in the principal's office. And then once I started drinking, man, I'm in trouble because my behaviors are absurd and tragic, and I'm destroying everything, an annihilation of all things worthwhile in this life, and that's what's happening. But with you, I wasn't in trouble. You seem to understand, and Ralph read that, right? So the message must have depth and weight. And then there's a solution. It talks about how we're going to lie to doctors, we're going to lie, we're going to get defensive and unapproachable by other people. But when you talk to me, I believe. And that's the magic that happens when one alcoholic's helping another, and you helped me. And I didn't drink, and I stayed sober, and me and him got better, right? I had 2 more kids by him, and we got 4 kids, and we bought a bigger house, and we moved to the country. And I decided I'm going to be a hippie. Hippies don't beat people up and stab people. I don't think they do. So I dug a fire pit, and I've planted a garden, and I bought some tie-dye kits, and I started smoking weed. And then I got thirsty. So I started drinking beer, right? See, I had no idea that time with you. I hadn't conceded to my innermost self. I hadn't really connected the dots. When you quit drinking, your life will get better. It's just a fact. It's just going to happen, right? But to maintain sobriety and find true freedom, happy, joyous, and free, right? How free do you want to be? Man, that's in the work. That's in the price must be paid. And I hadn't done any of that. And I hadn't read page 31. So I thought all my ideas were novel and brilliant. I'm going to take a trip. I'm not going to take a trip. I'm going to be a hippie and I won't beat anybody up. I'm only going to drink on Sundays. I thought I was just I'd whooped alcohol. I figured it out, millions of years of development and I broke the code, and then I thought that, and it wasn't true because I'm the real alcoholic. And things got real dark. I just want to tell you that at 25, 26, 27 years old, I sat in your meetings and I heard stories from podiums and I couldn't believe them. I thought, oh my God, that's awful. Right? I'm eligible too. And I didn't know who the four horsemen were at 26 and 27 years old. But when you return to drinking, you have the opportunity to learn new levels of darkness. And he and I divorced, and I lost that last job. And I love how Bill talks about no one knew that I was not going to work again. Man, I was going to get a job come Monday. Come Monday, I'm going to get a job and I'm going to get this straightened out, man. Who knew that it would be years before I would work again? What I did I worked, but it was a hustle. I didn't file taxes. I'm out here stealing, robbing, and prostituting myself to men, to get what I need, because that's what I do. Because when I have to have a drink, I have to do whatever is necessary to get that drink. And this is where I learned about pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. Yeah. But remember, I'm angry. So when I first hit the market, I'm an escort, and that sounds very nice, doesn't it? That sounds beautiful. And I was making a lot of money, but as my disease progresses, I'm not that anymore. And within me develops this rage. And so if you're in the entertainment business, the companionship industry, one of your jobs is to laugh at jokes and feed the ego and tell, oh, you're so funny, you're so smart, you're so cute. That's part of the gig, right? That's what you do. And this darkness is filling in me. And I haven't seen my kids, and I don't talk to my family, and I can't stop drinking, and I can't play the game anymore, man. You're not funny and you're not cute, and I just need you to give me that money so I can keep it moving. And it gets desperate. And I always like to say, business was bad. My business wasn't doing well because there's not a big market for angry prostitutes, so things were getting tough, for me. And so now I'm stealing and I'm robbing and I'm getting dangerously antisocial. And that's what I want to talk about, that where we become dangerously antisocial. And that's what was happening to me. I didn't value my life and I couldn't value yours. This is happening, guys. I'm 36 years old, 37 years old, and my brain doesn't say, go back to AA. It doesn't say that. Like, we can get so far away from solution and darkness that we can't even produce the thought. And I see that happen to sober people. I see sober people begin to try to manage I'm managing my life. They fall back into self-will. They get all the things that AA gives them and they fade out of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I tell you what, man, it's like watching a train wreck. You're hoping for the best, but you start seeing the mind shift and the darkness come, and the answers do not come like they used to. My friend Johnny says everything I learned in AA has a shelf life of about 48 hours. And when I get away from you, the stinking thinking will return. Man, I'll start getting indignant and expecting and deserve, and they're not treating me right, and the self-pity and the anger will come back. This all starts to happen when I'm not plugged in with you and Source. I want to tell you that in 2010, my dad picked me up off a street corner and he took me to a homeless shelter, and something happened. And I love that. I love that in Alcoholics Anonymous. Something happened. I've been coming to your meetings. I've been getting your white chest, but I couldn't quit drinking. But that day, something happened. And I walked into a detox center in a homeless shelter, non-medical. You just shake. If you go into a seizure, they'll call an ambulance, but they want you to remember the pain, And that was fine with me. And I laid there and I shook, and women took care of each other in there, and something happened. And I think I gave up. Right? I gave up this surrender that we're talking about in step one. This is where I ceased fighting, where I've connected the dots, man, and I've given up trying to fix it. I've been waiting on come Monday for years, man, years. And Monday I never do what I thought I was going to do, and time is wasting, and I'm dying. So I finally I don't know what happened. I wish I could explain it to you. I know that it was grace. I think it was prayers, the prayers for the still suffering, the prayers my grandmother said, the prayers that my father said, the prayers that we say. But something happened that day, man. And I knew something was different. And I went in there and I laid down. And the neatest thing, I wrote myself a note that said, "This is a good idea." And I carried that for about 8 months, because we will change our minds. We will change our minds. And I wrote that note, and I carried it for about 8 months. And whenever I wanted to leave that center or not go to the meeting or not call my sponsor or practice dishonesty, that note would come up and it would say, "This is a good idea." And what happened is, during that detox period, I thought, what the heck? What the heck do I have to lose? I had nothing. When I moved, I remember checking in and they had a nun there, and she said, "Honey, where's your stuff?" And I thought that was a trick question. I didn't have stuff. I had this lighter that I would let you use if you gave me shorts on your cigarettes, because you didn't get anything from me that I wasn't, bargaining to get something back. That's the way I lived. And that's what I brought to you. And I had nothing to lose. And so they gave me the book. I remember reading There Is a Solution, and tears just falling from my eyes. Like, you gave me the book. And I started reading it and I related. I understood step one. What is wrong with me? Doctor's opinion tells me, do I feel, think, and drink like Bill? Yes, I do. And I didn't know that. Again, sponsorship. Because I told my sponsor, I don't know who Walter Hagen is. Like, who cares? I don't know these words. I had to look up doggerel. I was unfamiliar with the term, like, I didn't know. And she took me to page 6. The horror and remorse in the next morning are unforgettable. She said, "You know what that means?" Man, yeah, right? An all-night joint supplied what I need. You know any of those? Yeah, I know the all-night joints, 2 bottles of gin and oblivion. Yeah, I know what that means. I began to find myself in that book. I began to connect the dots. I began to figure out what was wrong with me. I have alcoholism. I was doing a big book the other week, and it said, and to the wives, and honestly, like, we skipped that right so many times. At least I wanted to. But there's a line in there that stuck with me, and it said, "The strange world of alcoholism, where everything is distorted and exaggerated." Man, everything was exaggerated and distorted. The strange world of alcoholism. I knew what was wrong with me. I knew where I had lived for so long. And there you were. There you were with the solution. There you were with the step one proposal, right? That I am powerless, that no matter the necessity or the wish, I cannot stop drinking. That when I drink, I trigger a phenomenon of craving that does not exist in other people. And that I have this mental obsession, this selfishness, this self-centeredness, this need to blot out the intolerable consciousness of my existence. Man, it all started making sense. It all started clicking. I got excited because I always thought I was just crazy, which is probably true too, to an extent. But because my friend Mari, who's one of my favorite speakers, I heard her in Tennessee one time. I was new in sobriety. I was about 2 years sober, and I was at the Music City Roundup, and she said, I always knew something was wrong with me because people always said, something's wrong with you. And man, I never related to something more. I was like, what? You had given me these answers for things that I could not otherwise explain. How do you abandon your kids? Who, who does that? Who does that? Who puts their hands on their mother? Who does that? Who destroys everything they touch? Man, I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I got with you and you started talking to me about how you felt in your story and your message carried depth and weight. I heard a speaker say, alcoholism will take motherhood from you. I thought, man, it did. I didn't set out to be a bad mom. I didn't set out to be a bad daughter. None of us are innately bad, but I believe that about myself. And the more people I heard, it just seemed evident that that was true. And I couldn't escape it. And then I met you. I met you. My friend Peter says, my sobriety date is the day that a loving and merciful God interrupted my death. And I believe that. And then I got with you. And I love what Ralph says. And then I came all the way in and I sat all the way down. I knew I had nothing left to lose. And all I could do was ask questions and read the literature and take the action and do the next right thing. You know, I love sponsorship because, man, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what sober people did. That was foreign to me. I remember being sober. I got in a job. Not prostitution. It was like a legitimate job where I went to orientation, filled out a, W-9, I was employable. And my sponsor calls one day. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm driving up here to the liquor store. She said, oh my God, for what? I said, well, oh, don't worry. I'm not going to know. I'm going to cash my check. She said, why are you going to the liquor store to cash your check? And I thought that was a silly question. I said, well, because it's like $1 cheaper than Walmart. They'll cash it for you there, for $2. And she said, no, honey, why aren't you going to a bank to cash your check? And I thought, well, I had never considered that. And she's like, I want you to go to the bank and I want you to open an account. And I didn't know sober people used banks. I didn't know you all did banking that way. I keep my money in, my sock and cash my checks at the liquor store. So I had to learn something. That same job that I got that I loved, 2 years into it, the ego returns and I decide these people aren't treating me right. And so I cuss them all out. I throw my keys out. I mean, I'm violent still. That hasn't gone away. I'm less violent. There's less chance of me raging out, but it exists because these steps, they set me on neutral ground from alcoholism, but I am in a lifetime journey with 6 and 7. I am in a lifetime journey to unlearn, right? These old ideas and beliefs pulled out root and branch. That didn't happen for me overnight. Like I could believe that love and kindness were appropriate and I should do that to an extent. I believe that violence wasn't right to an extent. There was always a line where I would set behind me what you were saying and I would take over again. And that line sometimes had to do with fear. It always had to do with fear. It always had to do with fear. Like you're all love and tolerance and all these beautiful things. That's fine as far as it goes. But what about if I feel threatened, right? What about if it's one of my kids? What about then? Does this God idea work, right? When I got sober, I had a hit out on a guy. And my sponsor said, is there anything going on in your life that would pull you out of, and I said, oh, no, actually, everything's great. I said, there was this situation, but it's being handled. She recognized me and she's, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, my daughter was dating this guy and he's violent. He's a real threat. He's a threat to her. And so, but anyway, it's going to be fine. It's all taken care of and I'll be here. And she said, honey, you can't kill anyone and stay sober. And I said, well, I'm not going to kill anyone. I'm going to be right here with 200 alibis. We're actually worked out pretty good. And she said, no, honey, you can't have anything to do with anybody getting hurt and stay sober. And I remember looking at, and I believe that, I mean, I'm talking about to the depths of my being. I said, maybe you can't. I will sleep fine. In fact, I will sleep better knowing that threat has been eliminated. How free do I want to be? How much do I believe this deal? Am I all in? Am I sitting all the way down? Am I willing to take my hands off things and not self-will, to not resort to old ideas and old beliefs and old behaviors, right? And I'm talking about when the rubber meets the road, when you're frightened, when you're those instincts that they're going to talk about later today in the 4th step, when somebody's trampling them, man, when you're knocked out of your box, when the finances and the romances and the security and all that is you believe is being threatened. How do I behave then? Man, I didn't know what sober people did. This is a journey. I'm learning. 5 years sober, I kicked in my neighbor's door and I threatened to kill everyone in there. And I meant that. 5 years sober. 10 years sober, I put my hands on a sponsee. Now listen, there were years between these things, but buddy, here comes that stuff. That stuff still showing up. Those old behaviors, those old ideas, those old responses to life, they're still popping up, because I don't know what sober people do. And I'll resort to my old ideas. Step 1, that surrender, it's about going to you guys and saying, hey, man, I don't know what sober people do in situations like this. Can you help me? My life is unmanageable. The manager needs a sign that says under new management, right? I drove it into the ground. I had to get somewhere else with this. And and that's my step 1, that surrender. And it happens to get us sober, to get us here, to have us beaten into a state of reasonableness so we can receive information. The gift of desperation that allows me to do things I don't understand. Like, because these guys, I got big problems. I'm homeless. I haven't had a decent job in 5 years. My family doesn't talk to me. I'm estranged from my children. I can't stand me and I can't stand you. And some old timers telling me, honey, why don't you come early and help set up the chairs? Now, how's that going to help me? How's that going to help me? Hey, you guys are crazy, man. But step 1 allows me to say, yeah, what time do you want me here? And I set up the chairs. I say, why don't you stay after, Amy? We're going to make another pot of coffee. Because I didn't know where sober people went after 9 p.m. You all say the Lord's Prayer and then you disappear into the mist. And I can't sleep. And I don't know what's going on. And I don't have anybody to talk to. Thank God for the men and women that stay for the meeting after the meeting. They grab the lost and confused and they say, hey, we're going to go get a piece of pie or we can just stand out here and talk. I don't want to miss that. I don't want to miss that part. I never want to get so sober that I stop seeing that woman. Because what you guys did for me saved my life. And step 1 allowed me to figure out what was wrong with me. And then it allowed me to take some help. In the admission of my unmanageability, I was open for learning. And then in the identification of what was wrong with me and your depth and weight, I was able to connect and really believe that maybe for the first time, somebody had a real answer for me. And I had this willingness just to kind of follow direction. I said that before this. I heard this in my home group, it's a copycat program. Just be careful what cat you're copying. And see, when I was drinking, I am a tough girl. I look for the tough guys. Don't tell you they're tough, right? They just don't. And so when I walk in a scene, I'm figuring out who I'm going to hang out with. And when I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous, God gave me his best. He set me right down in a home group that was perfect for me, filled with people who exist in a fourth dimensional plane, man. They were all in and they were happy, joyous, and free. And they were doing all three things, man. That was the leaders I had to follow. Those were the men and women that God, he put me in this pocket of enthusiasm where I could grab hold and grow, where I could learn to show up early and set up the chairs and shake hands and stay behind to talk to the woman who just walked in. They demonstrated this program of action. And I would go there and I want you, but I had to learn. The learning doesn't stop and the manageability doesn't come back. I remember getting busy. We get busy in Alcoholics Anonymous, man. That's when we fade out. That's when we say, I can't stay after the meeting. I got to get home to my busy life. And I forget the woman that just walked in and doesn't know where sober people go after 9 p.m. I gotta stay plugged into this thing because I'll miss the miracle. I'll miss the magic. If I'm not doing it, I'll start managing. Oh, I got to be here and I got to be there and I got to do this at 7 and me, and all the things I got to do. Never stopping in the morning to say, what is the role I've been assigned? What would a trusted servant do today? Where would you have me be and what would you have me do? That's my purpose. And I watch it all the time, man. I tell sponsees, God didn't get you sober so the electric company was paid on time, and I've never had my electricity turned off in sobriety. I don't know how that works. I cussed out that first job and I intuitively knew my feet are trained. I ran straight to a noon discussion meeting. I raised my hand. I'm like, hypothetically, what do sober people do if they like cuss people out and get, slightly aggressive and quit their jobs? What do they do then? And you guys are always helpful. You said, well, honey, sober people typically, if they get tired of their job, they find another job. They do that first, then they put in a thing called a 2 weeks notice. And I said, that's interesting. I'm going to save that little nugget for next time. But I had about 30 days where I couldn't find a job. And the first reference I had, had called security on me. So I couldn't write them down. And prior to that, it was self-employed in the entertainment industry. That wasn't going to fly. So there I was in a self-imposed crisis. But this time the difference was, when I met you in step 1, when I met you March 6th, my problems had piled up on me and seemed impossible to fix. But 2 years later, I'd done all that. I cussed the worst. I lost the job. I didn't have a job. I couldn't get a job. But I knew it wasn't impossible to fix. And I just threw myself into you. I didn't have a job. I didn't have nothing to do but go to meetings. I was at every meeting. Who needs a sponsor? I was here for it. My time had been freed up while I waited for that opportunity to work again came. And that's what I do when I don't know what to do. I come to you. My life is still unmanageable. My life can become very unmanageable, especially when I begin to manage it. I went to my home group. I said, man, I'm in school full time. I'm about 3-4 years sober. I decided to go back and finish my degree. I'm in school full time. I'm sponsoring a ton of women. I got all these commitments. My children are back in my life. I have grandkids, my family, all the blessings of Alcoholics Anonymous, man. And I'm busy. I am a busy bee, And I said, man, I went to a home group member. I was like, man, I don't know how to manage my life. I mean, I don't know how to find balance. We hear that all the time. I don't know how to find balance. And it was told to me that one of our trusted servants who passed on this year, Don Majors, told his sponsees, we're in trouble when we try to start managing, and there's no such thing as balance. We're going to let God do that. And they told me to get a calendar. And when I had something to do, I wrote it in the calendar. And that included time with my husband, a date night, or time with my kids and work. And I filled my calendar, this written calendar, and I put, where my commitments were, but I included time for myself, time with my sponsor, time with loved ones, time for school. And he said, when people call and they say, hey, Amy, can you open your calendar. And if it's blank, you say yes. And if it's not, you say no. And then I let God fill my calendar. And it does, there's a magic, there's such a weird kind of magic that happens here. I can't, and some of you know it and you're like, yeah. And then some of you are like, how's that possible? But there's always enough time, and I always have enough energy, and I never think I will. Right? That seems impossible that I could get all that done in a day or not do anything today and things would be okay, or whatever the calendar looks like. But somehow it all works out, and somehow there's always enough. And somehow I always feel better when I stick to that plan, right? When I keep those commitments, and I get all that from you. So I have to continue to be sponsored. I have to continue to recognize and guard against the tendency of the ego to say, hey, I'm better now. I'm back for that management job. That is, I'm not qualified for a management position in my own life, and I know that today. And the evidence, and I never want to forget that. What I am qualified for is to stand by the door. I'm qualified to stand at the door. I love Shoemaker's poem. It's my favorite because you're going to hear from some really smart people. And I'm getting there, man. I read a lot. I'm in the step 11 kind of trippy crap. I love it. I am here for it. It's expansive. We had a homeless guy get sober, and he would come from the viaduct to our home group. And every day we'd say, hey, Joe, how you doing? How many days you got? And Joe would say, oh, I got 3 days. I got 4 days. Kept doing this with Joe. And one day Joe comes in, we're like, Joe, how many days you got? And Joe's like, man, I got 90 days. We're like, man, Joe, that's incredible. How do you feel, Joe? And Joe said, I used to feel like this, and now I feel like this. And I get it, Joe. I used to feel like this. My world was small, and it was dark, and it was crazy. And I've hung out with you, and I've done these steps, and I continue to do them. But man, I feel like this. It's expansive, and it's incredible, and it's magic, and I'm here for it. But I'll get lost in it. I'll get confused in it. And I listen to Eckhart tell you these really sweet. I'm like, I was listening to Alan Watts one day. I had to pull over and call Ralph. I was like, Ralph, this dude just said da 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 da. Like I get crazy, and I'll spin off, and I get so selfish and self-obsessed with Amy and Amy's journey, and what Amy understands and where Amy's expanding and all this stuff, man, that I'll forget to stand by the door, because that's where I'm most effective. And that's where I need to be. And that's where the miracle happens. I've got so many women on here and men that I have watched. When I met Suzanne, she lived in a homeless shelter. She was estranged from her 4 children. And I knew that I am her and she is me. And she developed a willingness, and she took my hand. And man, it's incredible today. I just laugh. She just texts me like, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and look what the kids sent me. And I get to bear witness to these miracles, man. This is the greatest show on earth, and I never want to give up my seat. I never want to give up my seat. I want to be in the middle of this deal all the time, because it's the place that I am safest. Today I have a relationship with all my kids, and it is beautiful and amazing, and they love me and I love them, and they have a mom they can be proud of. I have grandchildren that have never seen me drink, and they think Grandma Amy is the bee's knees, man. And I dig it, and they dig it, and then we have a great time, and I love to be included in their life. My father used to say, when I'm with you, I'm who I always wanted to be. And when I'm with you, I am who I always wanted to be, and I can't thank you enough for that. But man, I had to connect the dots. I had to figure out what was wrong with me. I had to recognize my powerlessness over alcohol. I had to recognize my unmanageability and give up the job. See, I can say things are unmanageable, but I can still believe I can fix it. I can still believe that I have a good idea. I can still believe it is only at the end of all things that I find me. At the end of all things, I find God. At the end of all things, do I find you? And with you, it's crazy, man. I love it. You're looking at a homeless woman 15 years ago today. I said in my own house, I was with Jerry and Steve and Turks and Caicos. I had to Google where is Turks and Caicos. like I get to meet incredible people and do incredible things, and it's nothing I did, man. I just I came to you and I said, what do sober people do? And you gave me direction, and I started following the direction, and I love that we're going to hear about those steps today. It's not the treasure, it is the map. And I love step one, and I work with um I stay on the firing lines. Those are my people. Lake Suzanne, right? I stay on the I love broken women. I love our third step tradition. Thanks for letting us in, guys. We appreciate that. Right? Fallen women. That's me. You have a place for me here. You have a place for all of us here, and that's incredible. And that's the beauty of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I love doing that. We do a lot of H&I. We do we do county jails and dismiss centers and homeless shelters, and uh, that's where I tend to be useful. So getting invitations somewhere like Turks and Caicos is crazy, right? I'm just like, they had chocolate bread. You guys ever heard of that? I was just blown away. I kept telling my husband all week, put your teeth in. Like, I mean, it's crazy where you'll go. And like, you don't know. We're people who typically wouldn't miss, but we're joined together, man. And it's incredible. It's incredible. And my life is amazing. I own my own business today. It's not an escort service. I am no longer a prostitute. If anybody was wondering, but sex work's legitimate work, just my opinion, but whatever. I do have my own business today, and I have a degree, and I'm well respected in my community, and I'm well respected in the things that I do. And today, when I get done here, I get to take my mom to lunch. There are simple and beautiful blessings in this deal. And I hope I never lose sight of them. I hope I never lose that sense of wonder at this thing we get to do, guys. And if you're new, follow the directions. Stop managing it. You suck at it. Just resign. Let someone else do that, and you're going to be much happier. Read the literature and plug into these pockets of enthusiasm, man. Find the people that have what you want and they're doing what you do, man, and just start being where they are, man. Showing up. I went to one meeting so many times, and I would introduce myself. My sponsor used to make me introduce myself to at least 5 people at every meeting, and I go around there. Amy Spain Duncan, alcoholic. Amy Spain Duncan. And finally, about 3 months in, one old timer looked at me and she said, "I know who you are." Like I was dead, man. I'm coming in. I never got kicked out of those sordid places. I didn't care how mean you were to me. I didn't care if you hurt my feelings. I didn't care if you told me to leave. I'm not going because what I needed was there. And in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, what I need is here. And I won't be run out. With one half the zeal we went about getting our next drink, we're guaranteed success. And I was a terrorist out there, and if you were between me and what I needed, you were in a predicament. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, I need to be where what I need is being handed out, and I need to be there, and I need to be part of that. So much has changed through the years, guys, and this thing, it just continues to get bigger and bigger. And what an amazing journey. If you're new, buckle up, buttercup, and hang tight. Don't let go. This is a good idea. If you're new and you've lost the magic, man, go find you a girl with dirt on her knees and doesn't know where to go after 9 o'clock. Don't take her home, fellas, but sit with her and buy her some coffee and watch a miracle happen. Take somebody through these steps. That's what charges me up, and the working with others. That's where the magic is. And if you're having trouble finding the door, I got a little tip for you. The 4th dimension, we hide it, and it's behind the door marked inconvenient. Walk on in. That's it, Ralph. Thank you so much.